Kevin M. Bridges grew up in Norwood and attended South Stanley High School, where he was class president and valedictorian of his class. He was awarded a Moorhead Scholarship at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where he graduated as a double major in political science and public policy analysis. As an undergraduate, he was active in leadership and community service organizations such as the North Carolina Fellows Program, the Order of the Bell Tower, the Alpha Phi Alpha.
You got to get that right.
Fraternity.
Alpha Phi Alpha. There you go.
In the summer before graduation, he was an Alfred P. Sloan Fellow of Public Policy at the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor. Bridges continued his education in Chapel Hill at UNC School of Law, where he graduated and passed the bar exam in 1990. While in law school, he worked as an assistant area director for university housing. He returned to Stanley County to begin his legal career. He has worked as a private attorney, as a prosecutor in the district attorney's office, and as a district court judge. He was elected to serve as a superior court judge in 2008. While his home district includes Stanley, Anson, and Richmond counties, he can hold court statewide. Judge Bridges and his wife, Vivian, have been married almost 20 years. They are blessed with 2 daughters, Ariel and Justine, and a son, Ethan, and his family attends First Assembly of Albemarle. And without further ado, I give you Judge Kevin M. Bridges.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. It is indeed a pleasure to be here to participate in this Lunch and Learn session sponsored by the Minority Male Mentoring Program, also known as Momentum. I want to personally thank Andell McCoy for inviting me, working with my schedule, and making the final arrangements for me to attend. I also want to thank everyone at Stanley Community College who devoted their time, energy, and resources towards such a worthwhile and noble cause. And to any administration, faculty, staff, and students, I bid you all good afternoon. When Andell invited me, she told me that I should talk about how to be successful and my life experiences. Whatever measure of success that I have achieved, I owe to God and to my mama. We know that through Christ, all things are possible. And I knew that through mama, what was possible became reality through education. My mom was a public school teacher for 34 years. She used to read to me at an early age. She would tape the names of various objects on those objects around the house so that I could read before school, so that before I went to school, I could read and spell words like refrigerator. My mom made learning fun. Later, I helped her study for her master's degree by making flashcards and calling things out to her. And all the while, I was picking up bits and pieces of the material, which is surely what she had intended, because with her organizational skills, she didn't need me to help her study. Before I knew it, I could identify similes and sentences and tell you what onomatopoeia meant. She used to have me memorize things and then recite them on demand for the entertainment of herself and her friends. Things like the words to the song Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and jokes. In honor of my mother, who passed away last August, I want to tell you a joke that she liked. Now, for a moment, I want you to forget the grown man sitting here and pretend that this is coming from a little boy. Statistics show that a woman in America has a baby every 45 seconds. We must find this woman and stop her. The lesson that I learned, and what you may take away from this, is that education is important and can also be fun. When I was in elementary school, I made good grades, but I usually turned in messy and wrinkled papers. One day, my mom sent a note to my teacher. Please do not accept untidy work from Kevin. Make him do it again. I thought my mom was crazy. When I was older, I would have to do chores. I didn't like washing dishes, so I would slouch at the sink. Even though I was getting the dishes clean, she would come up behind me and smack me and tell me to stand up straight. The lesson that I eventually learned was that any work that I set my hands to is worthy of my best efforts. I went on to graduate first in my high school class, and I went to Carolina on a full academic scholarship. Upon graduation, I stayed in Chapel Hill for law school. In my third and final year of law school, I met Vivian, who became my wife. This year will mark 20 years that we have been married. The lesson here is to marry a woman smarter than you are, like I did. You will be glad that you did. I graduated from law school, passed the bar exam, and started working as a private attorney in Albemarle in 1990. I did criminal defense, civil litigation, family law, juvenile law, and wills and estates. A turning point in my career occurred when I was appointed to represent a man charged with committing some sexual crimes against a little girl. My client, the defendant, was facing a maximum of up to 3 life sentences if he was convicted. In this case, there were no eyewitnesses. There was no physical evidence, like bruises or torn clothing. There was no DNA evidence. It was her word against his. At trial, I established that the little girl was very close to her grandma, and that grandma hated my client. From this, I was able to argue to the jury that this was nothing more than grandma concocting a story and feeding it to the little girl to get back at the defendant. Why, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you saw the little girl testify. You saw how calm she was. You saw that she spoke about very serious and shocking events devoid of any human emotion. She showed no more passion than if she had been reading to you from the yellow pages. Members of the jury, surely you cannot find my client guilty and send him to prison for the rest of his natural life on this type of evidence. The jury came back with verdicts of not guilty in all of the cases. And I was feeling great for about 10 seconds. That was when the little girl fell to the floor crying and screaming that she had been telling the truth. When I told Vivian about this case, it bothered her, and she knew that it bothered me. She told me that I couldn't continue doing this type of work. Although I respect the work that criminal defense attorneys do as a necessary component of our criminal justice system, I had to agree with her. So I started looking into other options and eventually took a job as an assistant district attorney, prosecuting criminal cases. I thought that this would be a better fit for me because in our system, a defense lawyer's duty is to his client. He must do everything that he can to zealously defend his client within the boundaries of the law. On the other hand, a prosecutor has a duty to seek justice. He cannot go forward with the prosecution of a defendant if he knows that he has insufficient evidence. The lesson here is that even if you do succeed at work, make sure that this work is right for you, and be brave enough to walk away from it if it is not. But make sure that you have another job lined up first. In my first year as a prosecutor, I tried my first murder case. A little old lady was charged with first-degree murder in Moore County for shooting her husband. The case was unusual because her defense attorney argued to the jury that she should be found not guilty because of self-defense and because it was an accident. He claimed that she was a battered wife for several years and that on the fateful day, the husband was threatening to beat her again, so she got a gun in self-defense, and that while she was holding the gun, it accidentally discharged. This case didn't look so good for the state. I mean, who would want to convict a little old lady who picked up a gun to defend herself after years of abuse? She took the witness stand. When it was my turn to cross-examine her, I just started peppering her with questions, one right after the other, not giving her a moment to reflect. Where are the pictures showing past abuse from your husband? Where are the witnesses? Why didn't you ever call the police? Why didn't you tell your family or friends? Why didn't you swear out warrants for assault? Isn't it true that you planned to kill your husband so that you could have the house and all the property to yourself? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you leave? At this point, she got angry at me. This little old lady leaned toward me and yelled, I wasn't going to leave my house and let him have all the stuff that I paid for. And the audience went, ooh. The jury convicted her of second-degree murder. The lesson here is to keep at it and find a way to succeed. After prosecuting for almost 3 years, I was appointed by the governor to be a district court judge. As a district court judge, I heard criminal cases ranging from minor traffic cases to felony probable cause hearings in murder cases. I heard civil cases including divorce, alimony, equitable distribution, child custody, child support, and jury trials where the amount in controversy was less than $10,000. I was elected 3 times as a district court judge. I was elected to serve as a superior court judge in 2008. Now I preside over jury trials in criminal court ranging from misdemeanor appeals to felonies including murder cases. In civil court, I have jury and bench trials in matters where the amount in controversy is greater than $10,000. Also, when you read in the local paper about people being arrested after the execution of a search warrant, that is usually signed by a superior court judge, and a good number of them are signed by me. Just last week, I had a detective and an SBI agent at my house at 2 o'clock in the morning to get a search warrant in a case involving a shooting. You will note that I've been speaking for a while now, and I have not offered you a definition of success. That has been intentional because success means different things to different people. It is my opinion that whatever definition of success you adopt should include the duty to be a good citizen. In addition to not breaking the law, what else do good citizens do? They take care of their families. Almost 23 years ago, I started working, I bought a house, I got married, and then we started having children. I was very active in the community at the time, and I started getting offers to serve on various boards and committees that would have had me traveling across the state quite frequently. Once again, Vivian stepped in. I told you should marry a woman smarter than you. She stepped in and she said, "You made these babies, you need to be here to help me raise them." Well, I couldn't really argue with that. I can hardly think of a more pitiful testimony than I did a lot of good things for strangers, but I neglected my own family. The lesson here is this: you can't be a success if you don't do right by your family. Success requires good citizenship, which includes taking care of your family, because our nation derives its strength, its stability, and its core values from the families that form its foundation. If our country is the bonfire that shines brightly, illuminating the world, the family serves as the torch which lights it. As our families go, so goes this nation. Many of the problems that we encounter in our nation today can trace their roots to the breakdown of the family unit. Without the discipline and self-control that families promote, acts of violence erupt. Without the respect for the property of others that stable families teach, destruction and theft of property occurs. Without the loyalty and sense of duty that families instill, people feel unconnected to anything and anyone and live life avoiding responsibilities instead of accepting them. And without the love and compassion that families provide, people live their lives searching for something to fill that void. Drug abuse becomes rampant. Children give birth to children. And atrocities occur across the nation in places like Newtown, Connecticut, Aurora, Colorado, and Boston, Massachusetts. The government tries to address these problems with an abundance of social programs. Some are worthwhile and yield positive results. Some do not. But there is no substitute for a stable, intact family. When I was a district court judge, I had men stand before me and refuse to pay child support for their own children. Just think of what that level of rejection does to children when they become old enough to understand that their own fathers don't care if they have shelter, clothing, or food. Think of the seeds of rebellion and sense of worthlessness that are sown by those fathers. Think about how these children will likely react when they grow up and how our nation will suffer as they perpetuate the cycle. Some of these men have gone so far as to tell me that I would just have to lock them up because I'm not paying her 1 red cent. Let me say I have been very happy to oblige them. What else do good citizens do? They participate in their democracy. Winston Churchill said that democracy was the worst form of government except for all the other forms of government. I think that what he meant by that was that democracy is a contact sport, which requires people to jump in and get involved. It can be messy and contentious at some times, but in the end, the majority should prevail for the good of the people. You are all familiar with the I Have a Dream speech delivered by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom on August 28, 1963. But Dr. King did much more than dream. He worked and died for a people who came up out of slavery, through Jim Crow, and around separate but equal, so that they could be regarded as equal to other people, and thus be afforded equal opportunities in the pursuit of happiness. Nowhere in that famous speech does Dr. King come with hat in hand asking for a free lunch. Instead, he demands that America make good on its promises of freedom, justice, and equality so that African Americans might partake in the meal that we helped to prepare. To the young minority men in attendance, the heavy lifting has already been done and victories have already been won by giants who preceded you. African Americans have the right to vote, to run for public office, and to serve on juries. We are no longer consigned to that segregated society where educational and employment opportunities were once automatically closed to us. Now, it is vitally important that you do your part in order to reap the full benefits of this great democracy. You must carry the precepts of the dream in your heart always, not just over a long weekend in January. Think about the dream before you decide that you are too busy to vote. Think about the cost in human treasure before you decide that you don't want to be bothered with serving on a jury. Before you casually throw away such hard-won rights, think about these words from the American theologian Reinhold Niebuhr, who said, "Man's capacity for justice makes democracy possible, but man's capacity for injustice makes democracy necessary." The lesson is this: decisions which affect your lives are being made all the time. You should have a say in them. I always tell young people that America is the greatest country in the world, and I always mean it. If you are willing to work hard and play by the rules, America provides you with more opportunity to achieve your goals and be successful than any other place on earth. So set big goals for yourself and then get to work. You must remember that there is no substitute for hard work, but in the end, it will be worth it. And do not place limits on your success. I once heard a young man on a news show say, "Don't tell me that the sky is the limit when there are footprints on the moon." Please do not hinder your progress with the easy crutch of excuses as a reason not to try. We are all traveling together on this journey we call life. It does not matter if you are black, white, red, yellow, or brown. It does not matter if you started out on this journey rich or poor. No one can control how the journey of life begins, but we all have a say in how we choose to live that life. In closing, I do not want to belittle the struggles that each of you may be dealing with in your personal lives. But before you allow the obstacles in your life to rob you of your success, remember that you never truly fail until you give up. Also, I want you to consider these words from a man who was born into slavery, became a businessman, and grew in fame and stature to give counsel to presidents. Frederick Douglass said, "Right has no color. Truth has no gender. God is the Father of us all. We are all brethren." I must say that he had a remarkable attitude considering his circumstances. I urge each of you to define what success means to you, make plans to achieve your goals, and work towards them while maintaining a good attitude regardless of your current circumstances. It has been said that a positive attitude may not solve all your problems, but it will annoy enough people to make it worth the effort. Thank you very much for allowing me to come and speak to you, and I'll be happy to entertain any questions you may have.